Hello, welcome to the Julia Hartley Brewer podcast, Inside the News. This is my new weekly podcast where we're going to be talking to some of the big names, not just in politics, in the news, well, just with people with some interesting ideas to talk about. My very first guest, I'm delighted to say, is the Conservative Party chairman, James Cleverly. Hello to you.
Julia, hello.
We meet on an auspicious time for politics, for Brexit, possibly even for the Conservative Party. This is a day after we've been told that Parliament is to be prorogued, Queen's speech the 14th of October, and the day after, frankly, I think blatantly have to call it hysteria on the streets of London, as we have seen apparently, according to the BBC, absolute outrage on the streets. Mostly it was laughter in my house, and I think for 17.4 million leavers. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
Well, the thing that I found particularly ironic or hypocritical, pick whatever phrase or whatever word you feel most comfortable with, is there have been people, Shadow Leader of the House of Commons, various people on the Labour benches going, when are you going to have a Queen's speech? This is the longest parliamentary session for, I think, 400 years. You'll need to check your history books. We demand a Queen's speech. We demand you set out your agenda, etc., etc. They've been saying that. So we've now got a new Prime Minister who was selected right at the end of the period before summer recess. So at the first opportunity coming back to the House, he said, right, I'm going to set out my agenda about health and policing, all that kind of stuff, have a Queen's speech, and a short prorogation ahead of the Queen's speech is what happens every single time you have a Queen's speech. So that's what's happening this time. And suddenly, boom.
So you're saying no biggie. Look, you and I both know whatever the Prime Minister's saying about it, this is all about the Queen's speech and about legislation. A lot of that legislation can go through without a Queen's speech, but also the timing is very specific. This is about taking on the Remoaners. Come on, this was a brilliant tactic. I'm a little bit hopelessly in love with Dominic Cummings, his chief strategist right now, because we saw the Remoaners setting up their attempts for a People's Parliament just the day before in Church House. The very next day, boom, in comes Boris Johnson with his announcement, this is what we're going to do. This is a game, isn't it?
So the Queen's speech is the point where a Prime Minister sets out their stall. Yeah. It's it's the point where you go, this is what I am planning to do. This is how I intend to govern. This is where the money's going to come from. That's about the spending review. This is what I'm going to spend it on. These are my priorities. It's a showcase for a Prime Minister. And it's completely understandable and legit that Boris wants to have that showcase. It's also, I find it remarkable that a whole host of people who have been seeking every means to bend the traditions and the processes and the conventions of the House of Commons to try and stop Brexit, to try and subvert the instruction that we got at that referendum, are now crying foul when the Prime Minister does the thing that every Prime Ministers do, normally once a year. And you think, look, come on, we are losing, I think, 4 days.
Between 4 and 6 working days, depending on when you do it.
4 parliamentary days. Yep. And if you need... If there's something you fail to achieve in 3 years that you desperately think you need those 4 days for, I'd like to know what it is. And there will still be time, there'll still be weeks of debate after we get back, before we leave the European Union. If they want to continue rowing about Brexit, fine. Meanwhile, us in government, we're getting on with delivering the coppers and the extra money to the frontline health service and improving funding to schools and getting the transport infrastructure. That's what we want to be talking about.
And I think it's what an awful lot of people on the streets, ordinary people who don't get obsessed with the constitutional niceties of proroguing Parliament want. However, I think they also do want Brexit delivered. Not that you believe that. If you saw the images on the streets last night, my Twitter feed, BBC, Sky News, absolutely full of images of largely hysterical women, as far as I could tell, saying how awful it is. EU citizens saying, I'm going to have to leave the country, and telling us how it's the end of democracy as we know it. John Bercow, though, the Commons Speaker, said that it was a constitutional outrage. Guy Verhofstadt said that it was, over in Brussels, said that it was sinister, as a sinister move. This overplaying, this is part of the whole hyperbole around Brexit now, where there's nothing in the middle. apart from pretty much I would have thought most voters, but politicians on either side, who's going to win this? Because we are into a battle royal, aren't we? This is now, game's up, October 31st, that is the deadline. If you go over October 31st, it's game over for the Conservative Party. What is going to happen?
So I don't think that it should be headline-making news that people that believe in democracy and believe in elections believe that it's really important that you deliver the instructions given to you by the electorate. That should be baseline. That should be unremarkable. That should not be headline grabbing. And you will have heard me say it before, and you'll have heard other people say it before. In a democracy, in a proper functioning democracy, you don't pick and choose which elections you respect. And in the referendum, it was made absolutely clear that the government will discharge the instruction given to it by the people. That's what Boris is doing. That's what the government is doing. That should be unremarkable. And the fact it is causing so much anger worries me because, as you say, you talk about the conversation. You look at what's going on Twitter, and I know Twitter isn't reflected. It's not real life. It's not real life. But actually, some of the voices on Twitter, I read someone on Twitter saying that this is the first time this has happened since King Charles I. It happens every year, pretty much. I mean, the remarkable thing is it hasn't happened in 2018, but there's normally Queen's Speech normally happens pretty much every year, but people are taking such extreme positions, and I do think there is a longer term job that we're going to have to do in politics, calming down the debate, having more thoughtfulness, more calmness, less hyperbole, less ranting and shouting.
But the people,
and that's not going to be easy.
No, but the people who are calling for compromise and things that tend to be the people who, when they say the compromise, is that we don't Brexit. That seems to be the compromise, as far as I can tell. Whether it's a citizens' assembly with the Archbishop of Canterbury going to be involved in that, or whether it's a people's parliament, as they're called. I don't know what other kind of parliaments there are. Maybe squirrels are holding parliaments. They've just not told us. I don't know. But when they talk about all that, what they are always talking about is a compromise, which is somehow remain. Now, there isn't really a compromise on a binary decision like being in the EU, out the EU. It did seem, though, that Theresa May, and you served as deputy party chairman and briefly as one of her Brexit ministers when she was trying to negotiate her withdrawal agreement, it did seem that she did try to come up with some sort of compromise, which many leavers, like myself, viewed as quite simply not leaving. We were, especially with the Irish backstop, we were effectively going to remain. You backed up the withdrawal agreement. I thought it was an abomination. I was with the ministers who resigned over that. You have said, though, when you ran very briefly for the Tory leadership contest, which Boris Johnson won, that no deal Brexit was not your preferred outcome. Would you, though, accept it? And do you think that those who have fought tooth and nail for 3.5 years now to stop Brexit of any kind from happening, do you think they will accept a no-deal Brexit? And do you think that they will come around? So come November the 1st, they'll all go, oh, well, we made a good effort, we had a good go, but we've lost.
So the culmination of that quote from me was that no-deal Brexit was never my preferred outcome, but I've always been very, very clear that Brexit was itself non-negotiable. We had to leave. We had to do what was demanded of us. The instruction given to us by the electorate in that referendum was to leave the European Union. The people I get and look, there are people like you, and you and I have discussed this on your radio show in the past, that you said, oh, I don't think this is Brexit. And I've gone, well, I disagree with you, Julia.
You're wrong.
And but the point being, there is a logic for people to say, you know what, I don't like this deal and I am willing to leave without the deal. There is a complete logic to that. There is no logic in my mind for the people saying, I refuse to leave without a deal, but I'm claiming to respect the referendum result, but then I'm going to vote against every deal that's put forward. And that's what we've seen with swathes of the Labour Party. They claim that what they are fighting against is a no-deal Brexit, but then they voted against every incarnation of a deal. And you're right, Theresa May, I think, genuinely and honourably attempted to try and square that difficult circle. She tried to put forward something which could get cross-party support. there was a strong implication from the Labour Party that the things that they were uncomfortable with were in the future declaration. So that was stripped out. And even when that was stripped out, they said, oh no, we're still not going to vote for it.
They were never going to vote for it.
And what we realise now is that the people who met in Church House, the people who claim to be making compromises, they're not making compromises. They don't want Brexit to happen. And I would prefer they were just honest about that, because all this claim that it's about a no-deal Brexit, that is a complete smokescreen. They want to stop Brexit completely, and I think that is deeply, deeply, deeply undemocratic.
Do you think they're able to do it? Do the likes of the Lib Dem leader Jo Swinson, Jeremy Corbyn, other, I suppose, more Blairite, Brownite, moderate Labour Party members, some of your former colleagues in the Conservative Party ranks, like Dominic Grieve, Philip Hammond, Ken Clarke, do you think they are able to stop Brexit? Because it seems to me that October 31st, we don't need to hold on to that date. 29th of March was chosen by the British government previously. 31st of October wasn't even a request from Theresa May. This is an arbitrary date chosen by the European Union. I'm not fixated on that, other than if we have another delay, will the British people put up with it? But do you think that no matter what, Brexit is going to happen?
I'm absolutely confident. I'm absolutely confident.
There's no way in which it can't happen.
Well, look, no, what I'm about to say, I'm absolutely confident that the Prime Minister, ministers, me, we are going to do everything we can to make sure that happens. There will, of course, be people trying to prevent us doing that. We've seen the people, having all these meetings, seeking to impose Prime Minister that no one's voted for, either inside the House of Commons, in a political party, or anywhere in the country. So they will keep fighting to try and stop it from happening. But the point that I think that people need to understand is that if we don't deliver on our promises, the damage that will do to democracy at the most fundamental level is huge. People want to know that if they give politicians an instruction through the ballot box, that we honour that instruction. We don't say, actually, you know what, it proves a little bit inconvenient, or it doesn't quite turn out the way I would like, so therefore I'm going to ignore that electoral instruction. We don't get to do that.
No, but isn't actually, their argument isn't that. Their argument is that you silly voters, you didn't know what you were doing, and we know better than you. That's the attitude. Have you had any personal conversations with, leading Remoaners? Again, and I use the term Remoaner rather than Remainers. Most people who voted Remain accept the outcome of the vote. But in terms of the people who actually are actively trying to stop Brexit from happening, have you had a conversation with, say, Dominic Grieve or with Philip Hammond about what they're doing, and why do they think they know better than the British people?
So I'm not going to say individual conversations that I have had, and I speak and have always tried to make sure I speak to Conservative colleagues from all branches and all traditions within the Conservative family, people that voted for Brexit and against Brexit. And I have conversations with all kinds of people. And one of the points that I've always made is that we've got to see the world the way our voters see the world, not the way that politicians see the world. It's incumbent upon us, and that's why we go back to our constituencies, that's why we knock on doors and talk to people. And the feedback I get over and over again, irrespective of how people vote in the referendum, is they want this done. And the Prime Minister, and we go back to the Queen's speech, the Prime Minister wants to set out his agenda about getting police officers on the streets, about reducing crime, about investing in transport and digital infrastructure and hospitals and schools. He wants to talk about stuff. There are other people in politics who seem to want another 2 or 3 years of debate and row and indecision about Brexit. And frankly, I think if the choice you're putting to people is like, what do you want? Do you want us to do what we promised, deliver Brexit, and then also get on with delivering those public services and a growing economy and that kind of stuff? Or do you want us to do another couple of years of Brexit-related belly button gazing and debate about process and that kind of stuff? And I think if you ask people that, and I do, they give you a consistent, irrespective of how they voted, they give you a consistent answer. Get it done so that we can talk about police
Anything
and
but.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even I, as a staunch Brexiteer, with a 3.5-hour radio show to fill every day, would like to not have to talk about Brexit anymore.
Other stuff matters. I mean, look, this is an important issue, and as I say, it's really important that politicians deliver on the promises they make when we go to the ballot box. But there is other stuff as well.
Well, let's talk about some of the other stuff as well. And you talked about it's important that politicians know what and reflect back what voters are thinking. How important is it that politicians, particularly the government, the cabinet, reflect back how how the population looks? There was a lot of talk when Boris Johnson appointed his new cabinet about the ethnic minority cabinet members, particularly very senior members, party chairman like yourself, Sajid Javid, the Chancellor, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary. I think 6 people from ethnic minorities sitting around the cabinet table, the largest number by a long way. This was talked about a huge amount. Previously, lots of talk about the number of women in the cabinet. Less so, of course, when you have a female Prime Minister like Theresa May. But how important is that? Because there were accusations at the time from Labour, from some backbench MPs, people, and some frontbench as well, and people like the likes of Clive Lewis, himself a black Labour MP, talking about how people like you, and Priti Patel and Sajid Javid had sold your souls to join the cabinet of, they called a racist Prime Minister. Did you sell your soul to be in the Tory cabinet?
Well, if I have, I didn't get a receipt. I didn't get a gift receipt. No, absolutely not. Look, I worked with Boris when he was Mayor of London. And I saw the work he put in to making sure that City Hall in London worked for everyone in London, all communities, all backgrounds, all races, all genders, all sexualities. The fact that he is seeking to deliver government on behalf of everyone in the country is no surprise to me at all, because I've seen the real person, I've seen the real Boris Johnson at work. Now, the fact the Labour Party have got a comically distorted caricatured vision.
Well, he's racist, Islamophobic, homophobic. I mean, every ick and ist has been thrown at him.
So when they're confronted with the reality, which is, as you say, a cabinet full of diversity from the Conservative Party, appointed on merit, it freaks them out. They can't compute. They can't understand it because it so contradicts their stereotype of him. So I look around the cabinet table and I see people who really know their stuff in the areas that they're working, experienced politicians who've got a record of delivery both in government and before becoming parliamentarians. And I was really proud. That's why I tweeted about it. I was really proud because I was looking at the cabinet and at other levels of government thinking, this is the party that I know, and this is the party that I love. And this party has been good to me. It's helped me get on. And that's why I love being chairman of the Conservative Party, and I'm proud to be a Conservative. And I look at the leadership hustings. There's a brilliant photograph of the final hustings in London in the Conservative Party leadership campaign. Nearly 5,000 people. And you look at the people standing up asking questions, you look at the people in the room, and I'm like, that's my party. And I'm deeply proud of it, and the government reflects the party and the party reflects the country.
And yet we've got someone like David Lammy, another Labour MP, talking about comparing Tory Brexiteers like yourself to the Nazis. There does seem to be a view on the left. I'm not into identity politics. I don't feel the need to have a woman representing me as a woman. I think the idea that a black area particularly needs a black MP, maybe lots of people might think that's understandable, but wow, in that case, do white areas get to say, well, we need a white MP to represent us? Well, I think you're into very strange territory there. I'm into what people think and what people say, as opposed to the pigment of their skin, which seems to me to be utterly irrelevant to the ability to do the job. The Labour Party, though, is very fixated, is it not? Well, particularly on the left generally, on this idea of diversity of I suppose, appearance rather than a diversity of opinion. But there seems to be a view that if you are black or if you're Asian, you belong to us, and you are somehow a traitor to almost, horrible phrase, horrible racist, an Uncle Tom.
So I've had this.
If you are right wing and you are ethnic minority.
So I've had this in various forms since I first started getting involved and interested in politics. I'm not going to go through the shopping. I'm not going to go through the shopping list. but it's and sometimes it's more pernicious actually. The name calling, I can give a monkeys about that. I don't care. It's water off a duck's back. That's fine. But it's the subtle little pernicious thing.
Like what?
So the idea, for example, that you can't really believe the things that you're saying. If you're saying conservative things, if I'm saying that actually I think people should have individual choice, that I think that they should have the opportunity to be rewarded for the work and effort that they put in. So these long-standing conservative philosophical things. The idea that I can't really believe that because I'm black is a nasty little nibbling away at what I think I've achieved through hard work and effort and a supportive party.
You're pretending to think these things.
Yeah, so I can
get on.
So I can just get on. That I'm speaking someone else's script. That is really corrosive, and ironically, the people who are hurt by that are not people like me, because I've been given opportunities, but it's the people perhaps like me, perhaps 20 years younger than me, who are thinking of getting involved in conservative politics, who may be black or women or whatever, and they're the ones who are being dissuaded. And I don't think it's accidental. I think it's a conscious decision to try and intimidate and scare future generations of conservative, right of centre politicians from, black and ethnic minority backgrounds, or who are gay or who are women, basically saying you will be targeted. Look at what we're doing to this guy, and know that Cleverly might be big enough and ugly enough and tough enough to laugh it off, but we'll come after you just as hard, and you don't have that little protective sphere. It's a way of intimidating, and you're right about that lack of diversity. It's okay as long as you look diverse, but if you think diverse, no. You don't get to play in the sandpit, and that's who they're trying to intimidate, and I won't let them. And that's why I stand shoulder to shoulder with young conservatives on student campuses who get intimidated, and that's why I go out of my way to support women and young black, Asian, gay. I want to say you are part of our team, and we will protect you, because they're trying to scare you off the pitch.
Well, I mean, it is interesting, isn't it, that the Conservative Party's managed to have two leaders who've both been Prime Minister, who were women, some of the most senior figures, by far the most senior figures in Cabinet being black or Asian, long before the supposedly obsessed with these things Labour Party. Yeah. And indeed, I mean, Liberal Democrats only just had their first female leader, Jo Swinson, and everyone knew it was going to be Jo Swinson because it had to be a woman. And everyone knows now that the next Labour Party leader has to be a woman. I've been told this by numerous people, because we haven't had one yet. And yet somehow ethnic minority and female candidates have made it through the ranks of other parties, particularly the Tory party. Is that just a coincidence, or is there something about the Conservative Party that means that happens specifically in the Conservative Party?
Well, the Conservative Party believes on promoting talent, and it believes in recognising hard work, and it believes that the society should give opportunities to people irrespective of their background. These are long-standing conservative principles, and we act by those principles. And I think one of the things that you find, I think, with the Labour Party, is if diversity is a tick box exercise, once you've ticked the box, you don't do anything more. So their view is all women shortlists. Okay, well that ticks the gender diversity box.
Got enough of them.
We've got plenty of them now, and we can stop thinking about it. And then fast forward a few years, people are saying, well, hang on a second, you've never had even a female leader, let alone a female Prime Minister. Whereas actually with the Conservative Party, if you graft, then you get on.
And yet you've got former senior figures in the party like Sida Vasi talking about racism in the party, saying it's been swept under the carpet, talking about Islamophobia. She's accused Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, of Islamophobia, of his comments about burqa and the niqab. I personally was of the view that his article in The Telegraph was quite wrong on the basis, not of what he described the appearance of the burqa as letterbox and bank robbers, but basically he thought it was an acceptable garment for people to wear on British streets. But are you saying you've never experienced any racism within the Conservative Conservative ranks?
No, so what I'm saying is that in all mass participation organisations, in an organisation that has, 180 plus thousand members, you will always have some people that say and do things which are unacceptable. And when that happens, we get a grip of it. But what I don't agree, and I've spoken to people within the party, Muslim colleagues at all levels, from very, very senior to very, very new, about their experience of the Conservative Party, and I don't recognise, and more importantly, I'm being told that they don't recognise the image that Saeed Abbasi is putting forward, and more's the point is that we have made it, and we continue to make it completely clear, that intolerant behaviour, racism, discrimination of any kind is unacceptable. It will be dealt with, and that is it.
Talking of, I was talking about women politicians as well, we've lost a very prominent woman to frontline politics only today, Ruth Davidson, leader of the Scottish Conservatives. She's a very popular figure, interestingly, very, very popular, not just north of the border, leading the Scottish Tory fight back at the last election, but across the country, and also, I think, cross-party as well, and I think across the Remain Brexit divide, although a staunch Remainer herself, she's someone I very much admire and like, and when she talks, I think she talks a lot of sense, and I think a lot of people, many different political parties think that. She's decided to stand down, partly over issues of Brexit and no deal and Boris Johnson's leadership, but partly she made it very clear in her initial resignation letter over the fact that she's got a young baby son with her wife, and she wants to be a mum, and the whole idea of travelling and leading campaigns for the next couple of years instead of being able to get home at the end of the day is not something she wants to know. Does this say something about the state of our politics in Britain, that it's very hard to be a mum, certainly have a young child, and be at the top level of politics? Or does it say something just about careers for women in general? Does it say something about the Conservative Party? Are there any lessons to be learnt from this?
So we definitely need to ask what we expect of people in political life. I met Ruth just when I was up in Scotland a week or so ago. She didn't give me a kind of an indication that this is what she was going to do, but
maybe seeing you was the last straw.
I think, but we did do, as is inevitable when you've got a family. We talked about family, so I've never been a mum myself. I put that on record, but I got 2 kids, and being a mum is, in any circumstance, as I've seen, really hard work. So that's the starting point. But it's just hard work.
But also, I mean, your wife doesn't work, so it enables you to be travelling around the country and doing a lot of that.
So I was born and brought up in South East London. My boys were born and brought up in South East London. Spent a lot of time in rural Essex now in the constituency. But family commitments matter, and balancing work commitments and family commitments is never easy. The simple truth is that despite everything we've tried to do as a society, the burden of family life still disproportionately falls on women rather than men. We're trying very hard to make it easier for women to take full leadership roles in politics and be involved in every level of politics, and it is hard, and it is sad when someone who is a phenomenal political talent like Ruth, I mean, she's effervescent, she's energetic, she's a natural communicator, was instrumental in turning around our fortunes in Scotland as a Conservative Party. When she basically says, look, you know what, the pressure that I think is going to be coming down the track over the next couple of years in my work life and in my family life, that I don't think I can balance that. It's really sad to hear. I think both politics and also society, we need to think really, really hard about how we make sure we don't lose any talent. And I really hope that that she comes back into the very front line of frontline politics as soon as she feels able to. She's she's just too good a talent.
Well, I mean, she's also, she's a big loss to your, voter appeal, particularly in Scotland, and perhaps maybe across the country as well, for many perhaps teetering around the middle ground of the, yes, and people do still do this between Brexit and Remain. Everyone's talking about a possibility of a general election coming up in a matter of not just months, but even weeks. October the 17th is a date that's even been mentioned. That would be effectively 3 days after Queen's speech. If we ever get that far, who knows? A vote of no confidence next week. We could be hurtling towards a general election very quickly. As party chairman, you're partly in charge of, making sure that you're prepared for that election. You've got the candidates in place. You're facing a challenge not just from the resurgence of the Liberal Democrats in terms of the Remainers, but also Labour Party, of course, still can't decide what they are this week, Remain or Leave, who knows, different constituencies. But crucially also the Brexit Party with Nigel Farage. It's going to be a very difficult campaign for the Tories to try and campaign perhaps quite differently in different seats as a strong Brexit party, taking on the Brexit party itself, but also taking on the threat of a resurgent, perhaps even a Remain alliance led by the Liberal Democrats. Are you confident? Are you as confident as Boris Johnson seems to be that you can actually deliver a majority if we do end up with a general election?
Well, look, we're not seeking, we're not looking for a general election. What we're looking to do, and this is what the Prime Minister's made absolutely clear, what we're looking to do is deliver our big promise, the big political promise that the whole of the political class made to the British people, which is to respect the referendum result. But also what we want to do is make sure we deliver on the things, as I said earlier, that people really value in their everyday lives, the things that actually, touch them and affect them, the schools, hospitals, police on the streets, all that kind of stuff. That's what we want to do, and that's what we're focused on doing. We have elections now every year. There's a regular drumbeat of elections, and whenever we fight elections, we fight to win them. But what we are focused on is delivering for the British people in all respects. That's what we can do. Other people can speculate and do that kind of stuff. Our job is clear. We deliver for the British people.
OK, well, again, it's all nice electioneering and sloganeering on that, but the facts of the matter are that unless you get a non-aggression pact, if you haven't delivered Brexit, unless you have a non-aggression pact with Nigel Farage's Brexit Party, you may end up with Brexiteer MPs like yourself facing strong challenges from Brexit Party candidates saying, we're going to deliver a proper Brexit.
Well, the message I would send, and the message that I send at every election, is the Conservative, the Prime Minister, Boris, the Conservative Party has been clear. We are going to deliver Brexit and we're going to deliver good quality public services and a growing economy. If that's what you want, you should vote Conservative.
All right, October the 31st, are we definitely leaving, deal or no deal?
Yes.
100%?
Yes. This is, we've got to stick to our promise. It's really important that politicians stick to the promises. We don't pick and choose which elections we respect. We're going to deliver.
James Cleverly, Conservative Party Chairman, thank you very much indeed for joining me for my very first podcast. This has been the Julia Hartley Brewer podcast, Inside the News. Thank you for joining us.